The bride was glowing with happiness until her 11-year-old daughter grabbed the microphone at the wedding. When she revealed what she found on her future stepfather's phone, the church fell silent. Sarah's hands trembled as she zipped up her mother's wedding dress. The morning sun streamed through the church's preparation room windows, casting a warm glow on Diana's face. She looked beautiful, but Sarah's stomach churned with dread. "Mom, we need to talk," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. Diana turned to the mirror, adjusting her veil. "Honey, not now. Everything's perfect today. Please don't start with your concerns about Robert again." Sarah's throat tightened. She glanced at her phone in her dress pocket, heavy with the evidence she'd gathered. The screenshots, the documents, the messages from his other victims, all of it waiting to expose the truth about the man her mother was about to marry. "You look stunning," Sarah managed, forcing a smile. 6 months earlier, things had been different. Sarah remembered the day Robert first walked into their lives, showing up at her mom's coffee shop with his perfect smile and expensive suit. Diana had been single since the divorce 3 years ago, and Sarah had never seen her mom light up like that before. "He's different," Diana had told Sarah that night. "He makes me feel alive again." Sarah wanted to believe it too. Robert brought them gifts, took them to fancy restaurants, and always had the right words. But then came that first night when she borrowed his phone to call Emma, her best friend. The message notification popped up, "Wire transfer complete." Wedding in Miami went as planned. Moving to next target. Sarah's blood ran cold that night, but she dismissed it. Maybe it was for his business. He was always talking about his successful company, though she noticed he never quite explained what it did. "Sarah." Diana's voice pulled her back to the present. "Can you help me with a necklace?" As Sarah fastened the clasp, she caught Robert's reflection in the mirror through the doorway. He stood in the hall, talking on his phone in hushed tones. "Yes, everything's set," he whispered. "After the ceremony, we'll have access to all the accounts." "No, she doesn't suspect anything. The kid's been snooping, but it doesn't matter now." Sarah's hands went cold. She reached for her phone, adding another recording to her collection of evidence. "Mom," she tried again. "What do you really know about Robert's business?" Diana sighed, turning to face her daughter. "Sarah, we've been through this. He's a successful investment consultant. He helps people secure their futures. Why can't you just be happy for me?" "Because I found something on his phone." "Something bad?" A knock interrupted them. Emma, Sarah's best friend, poked her head in. "They're ready to start." Diana squeezed Sarah's hand. "Whatever it is, it can wait. This is my day, sweetie. Please don't ruin it." Sarah watched her mother glide out of the room, Emma following behind. Alone, she pulled out her phone and opened the folder labeled Evidence. Photos of Robert with different wives in different states, bank statements showing massive transfers, police reports of fraud, and desperate messages from women he'd left bankrupt. Her fingers hovered over the send button. One mass email to everyone at the wedding would expose everything. But seeing her mother's joy, her renewed confidence, her hope for the future, Sarah couldn't do it. Not yet. She had to be certain, had to find the perfect moment, had to make her mother understand. The organ music started playing. Sarah slipped her phone back into her pocket and walked to the church entrance. Robert stood at the altar, looking every bit the successful businessman in his tailored suit. He caught her eye and smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That cold, calculating look she'd grown to recognize flickered across his face. "Not today," he mouthed silently, "just for her." Sarah straightened her spine. "Watch me," she whispered back. The bridal march began. Diana appeared at the entrance, radiant and hopeful. The guests stood, smiling and taking photos. Sarah took her place beside Emma in the front pew, her phone feeling heavier with each passing second. Robert took Diana's hand, and the priest began to speak. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She had to make a decision. Now. Emma squeezed her hand. "You okay?" Sarah looked at her mother's smile, then at Robert's practice performance. The evidence on her phone could destroy that smile forever. But letting Robert win would destroy so much more. The priest's voice echoed through the church. "If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." Sarah's hand gripped her phone. One moment, one chance, one truth that would change everything. "Emma, look at this," Sarah whispered, sliding her phone across the cafeteria table 3 weeks before the wedding. Her best friend leaned in, squinting at the screen. Another marriage license. Emma's eyes widened. But this one's from Florida. And the date? 2 years ago, Sarah finished. He was still married when he met my mom. The school cafeteria buzzed around them, but Sarah barely noticed. She'd spent every free moment of the past month digging into Robert's past, starting from that first suspicious message she'd seen. There's more. Sarah pulled up another document. I found his real name. Robert James isn't even who he says he is. It's Robert James Peterson, and is wanted in 3 states. Emma grabbed Sarah's arm. We have to tell your mom. I tried. Sarah's voice cracked. Last night, she said I was just making things up because I'm not ready for her to remarry. The memory of last night's dinner was still fresh. Robert sitting at their table, playing the perfect future stepfather while Sarah's evidence burned a hole in her pocket. Diana, the marinara sauce is exceptional, he'd said, wiping his mouth with a napkin. You should really consider opening your own restaurant instead of managing someone else's cafe. Sarah had watched her mother blush like a teenager. Oh, I couldn't. The startup costs alone. I could help with that, Robert had smiled. After the wedding, we'll combine our accounts. My investment portfolio is quite diverse. That's when Sarah had tried. Mom, before you do that, maybe you should look at these messages I found. Sarah, Diana's voice had turned sharp. That's enough. Robert is trying to help us build a future. Now, in the cafeteria, Emma pulled out her laptop. Okay, let's think. What else do we know about him? Sarah opened her notebook. Pages of notes, screenshots, and timelines filled the margins. He always takes business calls in private. Changes his phone password weekly. Has 3 different phones. And yesterday, I found this. She pulled up a Facebook message from a woman named Claire Peterson. I saw your mom's engagement announcement. The man in the photo is my husband. Or was, until he cleaned out our bank accounts and disappeared 6 months ago. I've been trying to track him down ever since. Emma's face paled. Sarah, this is serious. Like, police serious. I know, but I need more proof. Something Mom can't ignore. After school, Sarah took the bus to Robert's office building. She'd never been inside. He always made excuses when she asked to visit. Today, she walked straight to the directory in the lobby. No Robert James. No Robert Peterson. No listing for his supposed investment firm. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're playing a dangerous game, Sarah. Smart kids know when to stop asking questions. Her hands shook as she showed the message to Emma on their video call that night. Is threatening you? Emma said. We have to tell someone. Not yet. Sarah pulled out a stack of papers. The wedding's in 3 weeks. I got his schedule mapped out. Tomorrow he has a business meeting at the Hilton. I'm going to follow him. The next day, Sarah faked a stomachache to leave school early. She took a taxi to the Hilton, using money she'd saved from her allowance. In the lobby, she spotted Robert immediately, with another woman. She snapped photos with her phone as they sat in the hotel bar. Robert used the same move she'd seen him use on her mother. The same gentle touch on the woman's hand. The same charming smile. The woman was wearing an engagement ring. Sarah followed them to the hotel restaurant, sitting behind a plant where she could record their conversation. Jennifer, darling, Robert's voice oozed charm. Once we're married, your father's company will be in perfect hands. I've handled dozens of mergers like this. Sarah's stomach turned. Another target. Another woman. Another life he planned to destroy. That night, as Sarah added the new evidence to her folder, a knock came at her bedroom door. Robert stood there, his friendly mask firmly in place. Sarah, honey, can we talk? She quickly closed her laptop. Mom's not home. I know. He stepped into her room, uninvited. I saw you today, at the Hilton. Sarah's heart pounded. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's be clear. His voice dropped, all pretense of warmth vanishing. Your mother is finally happy. Do you really want to ruin that? Think carefully about your next move, Sarah. Very carefully. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Sarah waited until his footsteps faded, then pulled out her phone with trembling hands. Emma, she whispered when her friend answered. I need help. I have to stop this wedding, but I need a plan. Together, they stayed up late into the night, organizing the evidence, creating backup copies, planning for every possibility. Sarah knew she only had one chance to expose Robert. One moment to save her mother from making the biggest mistake of her life. The next morning at breakfast, Robert acted as if nothing had happened. He kissed Diana goodbye, winked at Sarah, and left for work. Sarah watched her mother humming happily as she cleared the dishes. "Mom," she tried one last time. "Before the wedding, can we just—" "Oh," Diana interrupted. "That reminds me. We need to do the final dress fitting today. Robert's giving us his credit card to pay for any adjustments." Sarah felt sick. Every gift, every gesture, every moment of happiness, all part of his calculated plan. She looked at her mother's glowing face and made a decision. She would wait, watch, gather more evidence. And when the moment came, she would expose Robert for who he really was, no matter the cost. The wedding was 2 weeks away. The clock was ticking. The morning of the wedding arrived with a sharp knock at Sarah's door. It was 6 a.m., and her phone was buzzing with a new email that would change everything. "It's all here," Sarah whispered, scanning the message from Claire Peterson. Bank records, marriage certificates, police reports, everything she needed to prove Robert's crimes. Her hands shook as she forwarded the files to her backup email accounts. "Sarah," Diana called from downstairs. "We need to leave for the church in an hour." Sarah stared at her reflection in the mirror, dark circles under her eyes from a sleepless night. She hadn't just been preparing evidence. She'd been preparing herself for what she had to do. Downstairs, Diana was already in her robe, makeup half done, practically bouncing with excitement. "There you are. Emma's on her way to help with my hair. Have you seen Robert?" He's not answering his phone. Sarah knew exactly where Robert was. She'd watched him leave their house at midnight, tracked his car to the bank downtown. Her phone pinged with an alert from the banking app she'd secretly installed on his phone. A large transfer was pending, every penny from her mother's accounts. "Mom," Sarah tried one final time, "please. Just look at these documents before." Sarah Elizabeth Martinez. Diana's voice turned stern. "We are not doing this today. Robert has been nothing but generous to us. The house renovations, the new car, my business loan. Money you'll never see again," Sarah muttered. "What was that?" "Nothing." Sarah forced a smile. "Let me help you with your makeup." The doorbell rang. Emma rushed in, carrying garment bags and a worried expression. She pulled Sarah aside while Diana went to answer a call. "Did you get Claire's email?" Emma whispered. Sarah nodded. "And 3 more women came forward last night. He's done this at least 7 times, Emma. 7 women, 7 weddings, 7 cleaned-out bank accounts. What's the plan?" Sarah pulled out her phone, showing Emma the presentation she'd prepared. Evidence organized chronologically, testimonies from victims, financial records, everything set to display on the church's projection system. "I uploaded it all to a cloud drive," Sarah explained. "1 click, and everyone sees the truth. Her voice cracked. "I just don't know if I can do it to her. Look how happy she is." Emma grabbed her shoulders. "Listen to me. In 2 hours, he's going to marry your mom. In 3 hours, he'll have control of all her accounts. By tonight, he'll be gone, and you'll both be left with nothing. You have to stop him." Sarah watched her mother laughing on the phone, probably talking to one of her bridesmaids. Diana had spent 3 years rebuilding her life after the divorce. The cafe was finally turning a profit. They'd just renovated the house. All of that would vanish if Robert succeeded. The next hour passed in a blur of hairspray, makeup, and nervous laughter. Sarah helped her mother into the wedding dress, each button feeling like another weight on her conscience. "You look beautiful, Mom," Sarah said, and she meant it. Diana was glowing. "Oh, honey." Diana turned to her daughter, tears in her eyes. "I know this hasn't been easy for you, but Robert, he's going to take care of us. You'll see." Sarah's phone buzzed. Another alert. Robert had just initiated a second transfer from Diana's business account. At the church, Sarah watched the guests arrive from a window in the preparation room. Claire Peterson was there. They'd planned this moment for weeks. 3 other victims sat scattered among the pews, ready to stand up and confirm everything. 10 minutes, the wedding coordinator called. Sarah's hands were ice cold as she took her place in the procession line. Through the church doors, she could see Robert at the altar, playing his part perfectly. Her phone felt heavy in her pocket, loaded with enough evidence to send him to prison. The music started. The doors opened. Sarah watched her mother step into the church, radiant in her white dress, clutching her bouquet with trembling hands. As Diana walked down the aisle, Sarah caught Robert checking his phone. She knew what he was looking at, confirmation of the transfers. Everything was ready. As soon as the ceremony ended, he'd have full access to the accounts. The priest began to speak. Sarah's heart pounded so hard she could barely hear the words. Her finger hovered over her phone, ready to trigger the presentation. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony. Emma squeezed her hand. Claire Peterson shifted in her seat. The other victims tensed, ready. Sarah looked at her mother's face one last time, happy, hopeful, unaware. Then she looked at Robert's cold, calculating eyes. The moment had come. I do, Sarah said, her voice stronger than she expected. She stepped forward, phone in hand. And I can prove it. The church fell silent. The silence in the church shattered as Sarah walked toward the altar. Her footsteps echoed against the stone floor, each step deliberate and firm. She caught Robert's eye. His face had turned to stone, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. Sarah, Diana hissed. What are you doing? Sarah's hands trembled as she connected her phone to the church's projection system. The screen behind the altar flickered to life. Mom, everyone, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something you need to know about Robert James. She took a deep breath. Or should I say, Robert Peterson? Or maybe Robert Williams. How many names have you used? Robert stepped forward, his charm sliding into place like a well-worn mask. Sarah, sweetheart, I know you're upset about the wedding, but this isn't the way to. 3 weeks ago, Sarah cut him off, her voice growing stronger. You made a phone call in our kitchen. You thought I was upstairs, but I recorded everything. She pressed play. Robert's voice filled the church. The accounts are almost ready. After the wedding, we move everything offshore. She won't know what hit her until it's too late. Diana's bouquet slipped from her hands. Robert, it's not what you think, he said quickly. Business matters, completely legitimate. Then explain this. Sarah swiped to the next slide. Bank statements appeared on the screen, showing massive transfers from Diana's accounts, both personal and business, scheduled for that afternoon. You've already started moving Mom's money. Murmurs rippled through the congregation. Robert's face darkened. And here's what happened to your last wife. Sarah clicked again. Claire Peterson stood up in the third row. I'm Claire Peterson, she announced, her voice carrying through the church. Robert married me in Miami 2 years ago. The day after our wedding, he disappeared with my life savings, $300,000. Another woman stood. Jennifer Brooks, Atlanta. He took everything, including my father's retirement fund. A third, Margaret Wilson, Chicago. He left me bankrupt and nearly homeless. Robert's composure cracked. He looked at the exits, calculating. It's all lies, he snarled, but his eyes betrayed him. Diana, baby, they're trying to ruin our special day. Your daughter is just jealous. Don't you dare. Sarah's voice cut through his excuses. I have proof of everything. Marriage licenses, divorce records, police reports from 3 states. You're wanted for fraud, grand theft, and identity theft. She clicked through document after document. Marriage certificates with different names. Bank transfers. Police reports. News articles about mysterious disappearances and stolen fortunes. Diana stumbled backward, gripping the altar for support. All this time, the business trips, the late-night calls. Mom, Sarah's voice softened. This morning, he started transferring money from your accounts. Everything, the cafe's money, your savings, even the house payment. By tonight, it would all be gone. Just like he did to them. She gestured to the women standing in the pews. Robert's charm vanished completely. His face contorted with rage as he lunged for Sarah's phone. You little. Emma jumped up, positioning herself between them. Don't touch her. The congregation erupted in gasps and shouts. Diana's bridesmaids rushed to her side as she sank onto a church pew, her white dress pooling around her. I can explain everything. Robert's voice took on a desperate edge. Diana, these women, they are lying. They are trying to extort me. Your daughter's been manipulated. The only manipulation, Sarah interrupted, pulling up one final document, is yours. This just came in an hour ago. The FBI's been tracking you across state lines. They have records of every marriage, every theft, every disappearance. She turned to her mother. tears streaming down her face. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I tried to tell you. I tried so many times. But you were so happy. And I couldn't bear to hurt you. But letting him hurt you would be worse." Diana stood slowly, her wedding dress rustling. She walked toward Robert, each step measured and deliberate. "Diana, please." He reached for her hand. "Everything I did for us." The slap echoed through the church. Diana's hand left a red mark across Robert's face. "Get out," she whispered. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Diana's voice grew stronger. "You're a fraud. A thief. You prey on women, steal their money, destroy their lives. And you," her voice broke, "you tried to do the same to me. To us." Robert's eyes darted to the exits again. Sarah noticed his subtle shift toward the side door. "He's going to run," she announced loudly. "Just like he ran from Claire, and Jennifer, and Margaret. But not this time." As if on cue, the church doors opened. 2 FBI agents stepped in, badges gleaming. Robert James Peterson. One called out, "You're under arrest for multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny across state lines." Robert bolted toward the side exit. The agents moved faster. In seconds, they had him against the wall, handcuffs clicking into place. "You don't understand," he shouted as they led him away. "Diana, tell them I love you." Diana turned away, pulling Sarah into her arms. "My brave, smart girl," she whispered. "How did you know? How did you figure it all out?" Sarah held her mother tight, feeling her tears soak into her shoulder. "That first night, when I borrowed his phone, I saw a message that didn't make sense. So I started watching, listening, recording. Then I found Claire online, and she helped me find the others." The church had erupted into chaos, guests talking excitedly, the other victims sharing their stories, phones recording everything. But in their embrace, Sarah and Diana found a moment of quiet truth. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you," Diana whispered. "I'm sorry I had to do it like this." Emma appeared beside them, holding Diana's fallen bouquet. "The FBI wants to talk to you both. And there are reporters outside." Sarah looked at her mother, still beautiful in her ruined wedding dress. "What do you want to do?" Diana straightened her spine, wiped her eyes, and took her daughter's hand. "We tell the truth. All of it. Maybe we can stop him from hurting anyone else." Together, they walked down the aisle, leaving behind the altar where, moments ago, a dream had shattered. But in its place, something stronger had emerged: trust, truth, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter who refused to let a predator tear them apart. Blue and red lights flashed outside the church as more police cars arrived. Inside, chaos had erupted into a carefully orchestrated investigation. FBI agents moved through the pews, collecting statements from guests while local police secured the perimeter. Sarah sat with her mother in the first row, both still in their wedding attire, watching Robert being questioned at the altar where he'd nearly succeeded in his latest con. "Ms. Martinez," an FBI agent approached them, notebook in hand. "I'm Agent Thompson. We've been tracking Mr. Peterson for 18 months. Your daughter's evidence was the break we needed." Diana gripped Sarah's hand. "How many others?" "We've confirmed 7 marriages in the last 5 years. Total estimated theft exceeds $2 million. Thompson glanced at his notes. "But today's attempt would have been his biggest score yet. Nearly $500,000 from your combined accounts." Sarah felt her mother stiffen. "The cafe," Diana whispered. "All my savings." "The transfers were stopped in time," Thompson assured her. "Our financial crimes unit froze everything when we got your daughter's evidence this morning." Across the church, Robert sat handcuffed between 2 agents. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his carefully styled hair disheveled. He caught Sarah's eye and mouthed something that made her blood run cold. "This isn't over." Emma, who hadn't left Sarah's side, noticed. "He can't hurt you anymore," she whispered. "You've got him." The church doors burst open. A woman in a business suit strode in, flanked by uniformed officers. "District Attorney Laura Chen," she announced, showing her badge. "Where is he?" Roberts' face went pale. Chen approached him, her heels clicking against the stone floor. "Robert James Peterson. We meet at last. I got a stack of warrants with your name on them. Well, your names, I should say." "I want my lawyer," Robert growled. "Oh, you'll need one." Chen turned to Diana and Sarah. Ms. Martinez would like to talk to you about pressing additional charges. Mr. Peterson here added a new twist to his usual scheme this time, threatening a minor. What? Diana turned to Sarah. He threatened you? Sarah pulled out her phone, showing them the text messages. After I started investigating, he said I should stop asking questions. That smart kids know when to stay quiet. Diana's face hardened. I'll press every charge you've got. He threatened my daughter. More women began arriving at the church, Robert's previous victims, alerted by Claire Peterson. They formed a line to give statements, each story more devastating than the last. He took everything, one sobbed. My savings, my inheritance, my children's college funds. I had to declare bankruptcy. Another shared. Lost my house, my business. I'm still paying off the debt he left me with, a third added. Robert watched them file in, his mask finally cracking completely. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he realized the full weight of evidence mounting against him. Wait, he called out suddenly. I can make a deal. I know where the money is. Offshore accounts, cryptocurrency wallets. Chen smiled coldly. Now we're getting somewhere. Agent Thompson, would you like to continue this conversation downtown? As they led Robert toward the door, he made one last desperate move. He yanked away from the agents, lunging toward Diana. Baby, please. Everything I did was for us. We can still. Sarah stepped between them. Stay away from my mother. Robert's face contorted with rage. He raised his cuffed hands, but before he could move, 3 agents tackled him to the ground. Add assaulting a federal officer to the charges, Thompson called out as they dragged Robert away. Diana pulled Sarah close, shielding her from the scene. I'm so sorry, baby. I should have seen it. All those times you tried to warn me. Mrs. Martinez. A young officer approached tentatively. We found these in Mr. Peterson's car. He held up a stack of papers. They look like transfer documents, ready to be signed after the ceremony. And plane tickets. One way to the Cayman Islands. Diana took the papers with trembling hands. He was going to leave us with nothing. But he didn't, Sarah reminded her. We stopped him. More reporters had gathered outside. Camera flashes lit up the stained glass windows as Robert was led to a waiting police car. His other victims watched from the church steps, years of pain and fear finally giving way to justice. Agent Thompson returned to Sarah and Diana. We'll need you both to come to the station to make formal statements. But first, he smiled slightly. There's someone else who'd like to talk to you. A woman in a crisp FBI windbreaker approached. Sarah Martinez? I'm Special Agent Rivera, Cyber Crimes Division. That evidence portfolio you put together? Impressive. Very impressive. Have you ever considered a future in law enforcement? Sarah blushed. I just wanted to protect my mom. And you did more than that. Rivera handed her a card. You helped us catch one of our most wanted financial predators. When you're ready for college, give me a call. The FBI is always looking for sharp minds like yours. Diana hugged Sarah tighter. That's my girl. Always watching out for others. Emma appeared with Diana's purse and car keys. The police say you can go home now. Do you want me to call everyone? Cancel the reception. Diana looked around the church, at the scattered flowers, the abandoned altar, the pews full of shell-shocked guests and victims finding solidarity in shared trauma. No, she said firmly. Let's turn the reception into something else. These women, they all need to talk, to heal, and we need to celebrate. Celebrate? Sarah asked. Yes. Diana kissed her daughter's forehead. We celebrate the truth. We celebrate justice. And most of all, we celebrate having a daughter brave enough to stand up and fight for what's right. As they walked out of the church, past the media frenzy and police cars, Sarah caught one last glimpse of Robert in the back of a police vehicle. His power was gone. His schemes exposed. His future now measured in prison terms instead of wedding dates. Sarah squeezed her mother's hand. They had survived. They had stopped him. And together, they would help make sure he never hurt anyone else again. The reception hall had transformed from a wedding celebration into something entirely different. Round tables that were meant for toasting new beginnings now hosted clusters of women sharing their stories, supporting each other, and building a case that would put Robert away for decades. Diana, still in her wedding dress, sat at a table with Claire Peterson and Jennifer Brooks, comparing notes on how Robert had infiltrated their lives. He always knew exactly what to say, Jennifer said, twisting her napkin. Like he could read our deepest insecurities and turn them into hope. Claire nodded. For me, it was my father's business. He promised to help expand it, make it a legacy. Instead, he bankrupted us both. Diana's hand shook as she reached for her water glass. The cafe. He kept pushing me to invest more, renovate, expand. Said he'd handle all the finances after the wedding. Sarah watched from the buffet table, where she and Emma were helping the caterers repurpose the wedding feast. The congratulations Diana and Robert banner had been torn down, replaced with a makeshift command center where FBI agents set up laptops and evidence boards. Agent Thompson approached Sarah with a fresh stack of documents. More victims coming forward. News is spreading fast. Looks like he had failed attempts in 2 other states. Women who got suspicious before the wedding. How did he choose them? Sarah asked, thinking of all the times Robert had watched her mother at work, studying her routines, learning her dreams. Pattern's pretty clear, Thompson replied. Single mothers, small business owners, recent inheritances, or strong credit ratings. Women working hard to build something. Women he could manipulate by promising to make their dreams come true. Sarah's phone buzzed, another news alert about Robert's arrest. The story was going viral. Local stations had interrupted regular programming to cover what they were calling the wedding sting. District Attorney Chen strode into the hall, her heels clicking purposefully across the floor. Ladies, if I could have your attention, please. The room quieted. Even the FBI agents looked up from their laptops. First, Chen began. I want to thank you all for your courage in coming forward. Thanks to your testimonies and the extraordinary evidence gathered by Sarah Martinez, we've just filed 37 felony charges against Robert Peterson. A murmur ran through the crowd. Chen held up her hand. But that's not all. His arrest has led us to a larger network. It seems Mr. Peterson had partners, other con men targeting women across the country. With your help, we can shut them all down. Sarah felt a chill. She remembered the phone calls Robert would take in private, the mysterious meetings, the coded messages about other projects. Diana stood up, still regal in her white dress despite everything. Whatever you need from us, you have it. Every document, every record, every detail we can remember. Mom! Sarah moved to her side. Are you sure? After everything today. Diana hugged her daughter. Because of everything today. Because you taught me that staying quiet only protects the wrong people. The doors burst open. A young FBI agent rushed in, waving a tablet. Agent Thompson, we found the accounts. Cayman Islands, Switzerland, cryptocurrency wallets, everything. We've frozen over $4 million. The room erupted in gasps and exclamations. $4 million. So many lives destroyed for money that now sat untouchable in offshore accounts. That money, Chen announced, will be returned to its rightful owners. Every victim will be made whole. Claire Peterson began to cry. Jennifer Brooks hugged her. Around the room, women who had lost everything began to see a glimmer of hope. Sarah watched her mother talking with the other victims, her wedding dress now a symbol not of deception but of liberation. Diana moved from table to table, sharing her story, listening to others, building connections that would help them all heal. Emma nudged Sarah. Look who's here. In the doorway stood Margaret Wilson, Robert's first known victim. She was older than the others, her face lined with years of pain that was finally easing. I never thought I'd see justice, Margaret said as she joined their table. 5 years I've been tracking him, warning other women when I could. But he was always one step ahead. Until now. She turned to Sarah. Until you? Sarah blushed. I just couldn't let him hurt my mom. You did more than that, Margaret replied. You gave us all our lives back. Agent Rivera appeared with her laptop. Sarah, could you walk us through your investigation? Show us how you pieced it all together. For the next hour, Sarah explained her methods, the careful documentation, the digital trail she'd followed, the connection she'd made between seemingly unrelated details. FBI agents took notes. Chen's assistants recorded everything. Even the other victims leaned in, learning how one teenager had unraveled a scheme that had fooled so many adults. The birthday card, Sarah explained, pulling up a photo on her phone. That's what first made me really suspicious. He gave Mom this expensive card, but I noticed the handwriting didn't match the notes he'd leave around the house. So I started comparing everything he wrote. 5 different handwriting styles. Multiple identities. Thompson nodded. Classic con man technique. But you caught it, Rivera said. Most adults wouldn't have noticed. Diana watched her daughter with pride as Sarah walked the FBI through her investigation. The wedding feast had gone cold, the champagne flat, but no one cared. This was a different kind of celebration. Truth over lies, justice over greed, love over deception. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the reception hall windows, Agent Thompson stood to make an announcement. Robert Peterson has been formally charged. No bail. His partners are being rounded up as we speak. Ladies, it's over. He can't hurt anyone else. The room filled with applause, tears, and hugs between women who had entered as strangers and would leave as sisters in survival. Diana found Sarah by the window, watching the last police cars pull away. Ready to go home? Diana asked. Sarah looked at her mother, really looked at her. The weight of fear and deception had lifted from her face. She was stronger now, wiser, but no less loving. Yeah, Sarah said. Let's go home. As they walked out, Sarah glanced back at the hall. The evidence boards, the laptops, the shared stories of survival. It wasn't the wedding reception they had planned. It was something better, something real. It was the beginning of healing. The house felt different when Sarah and Diana returned home that evening. Empty hangers clinked in the closet where Robert's suits had hung. His favorite leather chair sat vacant in the living room. The silence held both relief and raw pain. Diana stood in the doorway of her bedroom, still wearing her wedding dress. Help me get this off. Sarah carefully unbuttoned the back of the dress, remembering how differently they'd done this same task that morning. Each button felt like unpicking another lie. I kept all the receipts, Diana said suddenly, her voice tight. Everything he bought us, the TV, the furniture, the new car. I'll return it all. Mom, the FBI said that money was yours. He stole it from his other victims. You don't have to. I do. Diana stepped out of the dress, leaving it in a white puddle on the floor. I don't want anything he touched. Sarah watched her mother change into sweatpants and an old t-shirt, looking more like herself than she had in months. A knock at the door made them both freeze. Sarah peered through the peephole, then relaxed. It's Agent Thompson. The FBI agent stood on their porch with a box of files. Sorry to disturb you, but we need to document everything. Bank statements, gifts, conversations you remember. Building a fraud case this big. Come in, Diana said. I'll make coffee. They spread the files across the kitchen table, a paper trail of deception that stretched back years. Sarah recognized some of her own evidence mixed in with FBI documents. Robert's talking, Thompson said, accepting a coffee mug. Trying to cut a deal. His named 3 other con men working similar schemes. How many women? Diana asked. We've identified 28 victims so far, across 12 states. But there could be more. Sarah's phone buzzed with a news alert. The story had gone national. Her hands shook as she read the headline. Teenage girl exposes multi-state wedding scammer ring. They want to interview you, Thompson said gently. Both of you. But you don't have to. Diana touched the screen, reading the article. Maybe we should warn other women. They worked late into the night, documenting every detail of their life with Robert. Each memory they examined revealed new layers of deception. The business trips, Diana realized, sorting through credit card statements. He was visiting other targets. The renovations, Sarah added. He used them to justify accessing your accounts. Around midnight, Emma came over with pizza and changed into her pajamas. Mom said I could stay. You shouldn't be alone tonight. Sarah hugged her friend. I couldn't have done any of this without you. That reminds me, Thompson said, pulling out another file. We found something interesting in Robert's phone records. Multiple calls to your high school. Sarah's stomach dropped. The week I started investigating. He tried to have me transferred to a different school. Diana's head snapped up. He what? Called the principal, posed as my father. Said we were moving districts. If Emma hadn't overheard the office staff talking about it. Diana knocked her chair back, standing abruptly. He tried to separate us. Get you out of the way. Her hands clenched into fists. I want to see him. Mom, no. MS. Martinez, Thompson interjected. I understand how you feel. But, no, you don't. Diana's voice shook. He didn't just steal money. He tried to steal my daughter. I need to look him in the eye. Tell him exactly what I think of him. Thompson hesitated, then nodded. I'll arrange it. But not tonight. Tonight, you both need rest. After he left, the three of them curled up on the living room couch with blankets and the pizza. Diana kept touching Sarah's hair, as if reassuring herself her daughter was really there. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm your mother. I should have protected you. You did, Sarah insisted. You taught me to trust my instincts, to fight for what's right. Emma turned on the TV for distraction, but every channel seemed to be covering the story. They watched in silence as reporters interviewed Robert's other victims. He was so perfect, one woman sobbed, said all the right things, promised to adopt my kids. The wedding was planned, another shared. Then my bank called about suspicious transfers. Diana muted the TV. I keep thinking, what if you hadn't caught him? What if I'd married him? But I did catch him, Sarah said firmly. Because I had you. Everything you taught me about paying attention to details, trusting my gut, standing up for what's right. That's how I figured it out. Around 2 a.m., Emma fell asleep on the couch. Diana made up the guest room, but Sarah couldn't bear to leave her mother alone. They lay in Diana's bed, like they used to when Sarah was little and scared of storms. But this time, they were weathering a different kind of tempest. Tell me everything, Diana whispered in the dark. From the beginning. I need to understand. So Sarah did. She described that first suspicious message, the late-night research sessions with Emma, the careful documentation of every inconsistency. She talked about her fear when Robert threatened her desperation when she couldn't make her mother see the truth. The worst part was watching him manipulate you, Sarah admitted. Seeing how he used your dreams against you. Diana was quiet for a long moment. The cafe expansion. The business loans. He knew exactly what I wanted to hear. But the cafe is yours, Sarah reminded her. You built it without him. And now I know I can trust my own strength. Diana hugged her daughter close. And my own daughter's wisdom. They dozed fitfully, waking to every creak and shadow. Around dawn, Diana's phone rang. Her sister Laura, calling from Arizona. Oh my God, Di, I just saw the news. Are you okay? Is Sarah okay? Diana put the phone on speaker. Soon, more calls started coming in. Family, friends, everyone offering support, expressing shock, sharing their own suspicions about Robert that they'd been too afraid to voice. I always thought something was off about him, Laura said. The way he avoided personal questions, changed the subject whenever we asked about his past. Sarah watched her mother talking with her sister, saw the tension in her shoulders slowly easing as she realized she wasn't alone. They weren't alone. The morning sun crept through the windows, painting the room in soft light. Emma wandered in with coffee and day-old pizza. Diana's phone kept buzzing with messages of support. Mom, Sarah asked softly, are we going to be okay? Diana looked around the room, at her daughter's strength, her friends' loyalty, the family rallying around them through the phone. She smiled, really smiled, for the first time since the wedding. Yeah, baby. We're going to be more than okay. We're going to be stronger. Later that morning, they would face reporters and give statements. They would help other victims reclaim their lives. They would begin the long process of healing. But for now, they held each other in the quiet dawn, two women who had faced deception with truth, fear with courage, and emerged victorious. The cafe was closed, but voices drifted through its darkened windows. Inside, Diana had pushed together several tables to accommodate the growing support group. Women who had survived Robert's schemes gathered weekly now, sharing stories over coffee and pastries. The hardest part, Jennifer was saying, isn't the money. It's trusting again. Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. Diana poured more coffee, her wedding ring conspicuously absent from her finger. I jumped every time my phone rang for months, Claire added. Kept thinking he'd find a way to contact me, even from jail. Sarah sat at the counter, homework spread out in front of her, half listening to the conversations. 3 months had passed since the wedding that wasn't. 3 months of healing, testifying, rebuilding. The bell above the door chimed. Agent Rivera stepped in, carrying her usual stack of files. Ladies, she nodded to the group. Sarah, got a minute? Sarah followed the FBI agent to a corner table. Rivera pulled out a tablet showing surveillance photos. Another one, she said grimly. Operating in Seattle. Same pattern, targeting single mothers, small business owners. We need your help. My help? You spotted patterns we missed for years. I've got agents with decades of experience still asking how you pieced it all together. Sarah glanced at her mother, now deep in conversation with Margaret Wilson. I just paid attention. Noticed things that didn't add up. Exactly. Rivera smiled. We're building a training program, teaching agents and local police what to look for. Would you consider consulting? Before Sarah could answer, the cafe door opened again. District Attorney Chen walked in, her heels silent on the worn wooden floor. Good news, everyone, she announced. Robert Peterson signed a full confession. In exchange for naming his entire network, he's getting 25 years. A heavy silence fell over the room. 25 years. A quarter-century of safety, of knowing he couldn't hurt anyone else. Diana gripped the back of a chair. When's sentencing? Next week. You're all welcome to make victim impact statements. Sarah watched the women exchange looks. Some nodded firmly, others shrank back. The thought of facing Robert again, even in custody, carried different weights for each of them. I'll do it, Sarah said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. Someone needs to tell him exactly what he did to all of us. Diana crossed the room to her daughter. Baby, you don't have to. I want to. Sarah straightened her spine. He didn't just steal money. He stole trust, peace of mind, the ability to believe in love. Someone needs to make him understand that. Claire stood up. I'll do it too. Me too, Jennifer added. One by one, the women found their voices, their courage building on each other's strength. Agent Thompson arrived later with updates on the recovered funds. He spread documents across the tables, explaining the process of asset recovery. Most of the money's been traced, he reported. Offshore accounts, hidden investments. It'll take time, but you'll all get your settlements. Diana shook her head. I don't want his money. Give my share to the others. Mom, Sarah protested, but Diana held up her hand. The cafe's doing fine. Better than ever, actually. And we have something more valuable than money. She looked around the room. We have truth, community, real support. The support group meetings had started spontaneously after the wedding. Women who'd seen the news coverage began showing up at the cafe, sharing similar stories. Diana opened her doors, her heart, her understanding. Emma arrived after her dance practice, still in her leotard. She'd become a fixture at these meetings, offering a teenager's perspective and unwavering friendship. Sarah, she rushed to her friend. You won't believe what happened at school today. Remember that fundraiser you suggested? For victims of financial fraud. Sarah nodded. They proposed it to the student council last month. It's happening. The whole school's on board. Even Principal Matthews is helping. The women listened as Emma explained their plan, educational workshops, support resources, warning signs to watch for. Sarah felt a familiar warmth in her chest. They were turning their pain into purpose. That reminds me, Rivera interjected. Sarah, that blog you started? It's gone viral. Police departments across the country are sharing it. Sarah blushed. She'd started writing about her experience, offering advice on spotting romance scams and financial predators. The blog had taken off, reaching thousands of readers. Speaking of reaching people, Chen added, National News wants to interview you both. Primetime special. Diana squeezed Sarah's shoulder. What do you think, honey? Sarah looked around the cafe, at the women supporting each other, at Emma's proud smile, at the agents who'd become allies in their fight for justice. If it helps other people, let's do it. The meeting continued as sunset painted the cafe windows orange. Women shared updates on their lives, new jobs, therapy breakthroughs, small steps toward trusting again. Margaret Wilson showed pictures of her new granddaughter. First time I've felt joy in years, she admitted. Claire Peterson announced she was reopening her father's business. Starting small, but it's mine again. Jennifer Brooks had enrolled in law school. I want to help other women fight back. Sarah watched her mother moving among these survivors, offering hugs, refilling coffee, sharing her strength. Diana had transformed her pain into power, her cafe into a sanctuary. The door chimed again. Laura, Diana's sister, walked in with a box of fresh pastries. Sorry I'm late, she called, but I brought reinforcements. The weekly meetings had become a family affair. Laura drove up from Arizona whenever she could. Emma's mother often brought dinner. Even Agent Thompson's wife had joined their circle of support. As the evening wound down, Sarah helped clean up while the last few women lingered, exchanging phone numbers and promises to check in. "You okay?" Diana asked, wiping down tables. Thinking about the sentencing, Sarah stacked coffee cups. "I know what I want to say to him. I've been writing it down. Want to practice with me?" They sat in the empty cafe, the streetlights casting long shadows through the windows. Sarah pulled out her notebook and began to read. "Robert Peterson, you thought you could break us. Separate mothers from daughters, women from their dreams, survivors from their truth. But you failed." Diana listened, tears streaming down her face, as her daughter's words painted a picture not of victims, but of warriors. Women who had faced deception with courage, loss with resilience, pain with purpose. When Sarah finished reading, Diana hugged her tight. "Perfect," she whispered. "Absolutely perfect." They locked up the cafe and walked home together through the quiet streets. Tomorrow would bring more healing, more fighting, more supporting others. But tonight, they had each other, their truth, and a strength that no con man could ever steal. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Sarah stepped up to the podium. Robert Peterson sat 20 feet away in an orange jumpsuit, shackled and diminished. Nothing like the confident man who had almost married her mother. "Your Honor," Sarah began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "3 months ago, I stood in a church and exposed a predator. Today, I stand here to make sure he never forgets what he did to us." Diana watched from the front row, squeezing Emma's hand. Behind them sat rows of Robert's victims, united in their pursuit of justice. "Mr. Peterson, you didn't just steal money," Sarah continued. "You stole trust. You made my mother doubt her own judgment. You made all these women question their worth. You tried to tear families apart." Robert shifted in his seat, avoiding her gaze. "But look around this courtroom. Every woman here, they are stronger now, wiser, united. You tried to isolate us, but instead, you brought us together." Agent Rivera nodded from her position near the door. Thompson sat beside her, taking notes. They'd both become more than law enforcement. They were part of the extended family born from trauma. "I'm 11 years old," Sarah's voice filled the silent courtroom. "I had to grow up fast, learning to investigate, to gather evidence, to protect my mother. But you know what? I'm glad I did, because now I know that love means fighting for the truth, even when it hurts." Diana wiped tears from her cheeks as Sarah turned directly to Robert. "You're going to prison for a long time. But we're free. Free to heal, to grow, to trust again. That's something you can never take from us." As Sarah returned to her seat, other women stepped up to share their stories. Claire described rebuilding her father's business. Jennifer talked about law school. Margaret spoke about finally being able to help fund her granddaughter's education. Robert seemed to shrink with each testimony, his practiced charm crumbling under the weight of truth. Finally, Diana stood. She walked to the podium, tall and elegant in her business suit, a far cry from the wedding dress she'd worn 3 months ago. "Robert," she said simply, "I forgive you." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Robert's head snapped up. "Not for your sake," Diana continued, "but for mine. For my daughters. We won't carry your poison anymore. You've lost your power over us." The judge listened to all the testimonies, his expression grave. When everyone had spoken, he addressed Robert directly. "Mr. Peterson, your crimes go beyond financial fraud. You preyed on hope, on love, on trust itself. The court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for 20 years. The gavel struck. It was done. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered with cameras and microphones. Sarah and Diana stood with the other victims, united in their victory. "What's next for you?" a reporter asked Sarah. She looked at Agent Rivera, who smiled encouragingly. "I'm going to keep helping others. The FBI's asked me to consult on their training program. And my blog about spotting romance scams has reached thousands of people." "And the cafe?" another reporter asked Diana. "It's not just a cafe anymore," Diana replied. "It's a community center. We host support groups, workshops, educational sessions, helping other women protect themselves." Emma pushed through the crowd with her phone. "Sarah, the fundraiser just hit its goal. We can launch the awareness program in schools next month." The reporters scribbled frantically, capturing this story of triumph over deception. But Sarah barely noticed them. She was watching her mother, standing strong among the women she now called sisters. Later that evening, they gathered at the cafe for a different kind of celebration. The tables were filled with food, laughter, and plans for the future. The foundation paperwork is approved, Jennifer announced, now in her first semester of law school. We can officially start helping other victims with legal support. Claire raised her coffee cup. The business loans came through. Dad's company will reopen next month, stronger than ever. Agent Rivera shared updates on the larger investigation. Robert's confession had led them to 3 more con men, preventing countless future victims. Sarah, Thompson called from across the room. Got something for you. He handed her an official-looking envelope. Inside was an invitation to speak at the FBI's next training conference. We want you to teach our agents what to look for, Rivera explained. Help us catch these predators before they hurt more families. Diana beamed with pride. My daughter, the fraud expert. More like the truth expert, Emma corrected, hugging her friend. The cafe door chimed as more people arrived. Laura with her famous casserole, Emma's parents with drinks, even Agent Thompson's wife carrying a cake. To new beginnings, Diana raised her cup. The room echoed her toast. Sarah looked around at their expanded family. Women who had been victims were now advocates. A cafe that had almost been stolen was now a sanctuary. A mother and daughter who had faced deception were now helping others find truth. Mom, Sarah asked softly, do you ever regret it? The wedding? I mean, Diana pulled her daughter close. Never. That day didn't destroy us. It showed us who we really are. Outside, the sun set on another day of healing. Inside, the cafe glowed with warmth and purpose. Sarah took out her laptop, opening her blog to write a new post. Dear readers, she typed, today we saw justice. But more importantly, we saw strength. Here's what I've learned about fighting back, about trusting truth, about turning pain into power. The words flowed easily now, carrying hope to others who might be facing their own battles with deception. In the background, she heard her mother laughing with their newfound family, the sound of healing, of victory, of love that could not be broken. Robert had tried to tear them apart. Instead, he had helped them build something beautiful, a community of survivors turned warriors, of victims turned advocates, of broken trust transformed into unshakable strength. Sarah saved a blog post and joined the celebration. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help others, new chances to stand up for truth. But tonight, they celebrated, not the end of something, but the beginning of everything that mattered, truth, justice, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter who had faced darkness and emerged stronger in the light.